Oi, oi! It's your boy. A well-rested Jack Slack returned from the beach. But even then, I didn't take a break for long when the news came through that Ian Gary had put it on Islam Makachev, had made him hold for dear life. I found a quiet cafe and I recorded a cheeky boycast and uploaded that. If you haven't heard that, that was on the Patreon. But I came back and the first thing I was greeted by was a card that, before it happened, looked all right. And when it happened, pretty good. Lots of finishes, which is not, just a guarantee of a good night of fights. I can get that on any Explode FC regional mismatch card. But there were some good fights on this, some good matchups that resulted in finishes, which is always good. If someone is a good fighter and finishes another good fighter, that's important. Only a couple of snoozers, predictably the heavyweight one. But we'll start with the top, the Gregory Rodrigues, Robocop versus Anthony Hernandez. Robocop versus Fluffy, probably easier. But this was pretty good. This was a good showing by Gregory Rodrigues. And Gregory Rodrigues, I made a joke about him in his next fight returning to not hitting the body enough, but he's actually pretty good at hitting the body. There's a number of things Gregory Rodrigues does that I really like. He's a very good pressure fighter. He walks people down and then he beats up the body and the legs, hits them with elbows, mixes in his wrestling perfectly, has great ground and pound, which almost no one does in modern MMA. And his weight cutting technique is sublime. The man is fucking enormous, no matter who he fights. If you remember how small Jared Cannonier looked against Christian Leroy Duncan, both of them looked really small against Gregory Rodrigues. He is fucking massive. In fact, you can watch some sparring footage of him beating up Alex Pereira. It's standard Alex Pereira sparring footage, because when, his whole thing is power, and when you take that off, you do tend to look like garbage if you don't have the other stuff there too. Plus, people are always working on their weaknesses in sparring as well, but he's a big old boy, that's what I'm saying. And Anthony Hernandez is a good-sized middleweight, but certainly not one of the biggest, and he tends to win fights on his pace. This fight looked like Gregory Rodrigues had watched the Sean Strickland Hernandez fight, and he was treating it like he was fighting King Hippo. Every single thing Fluffy did, he started hitting him in the body almost immediately. He let Fluffy push him to the fence immediately, and then started kneeing his body from there. When they came off the fence, he was body jabbing to the exclusion of head jabbing. He was just body jabbing. He was throwing tons of front kicks to the body. Then he started applying the calf kick in about round 2, round 3, and that was really fucking Hernandez up. And because Hernandez couldn't get him down and wasn't applying any other volume or he wasn't attacking in any other way aside from making Rodrigues wrestle, and he wasn't really doing that very well. Rodrigues was hitting him and staying on balance. So the first 2 rounds were mainly that. He was forced to switch stances by these calf kicks, which knocked him off his feet 4 times in one of the rounds. And honestly, he looked quite good from the bottom. He got mounted, and he grabbed a wrist and started turning onto his hands and knees, pushing the wrist away from, which is something that, was it Jan did it against Aljo, or Aljo did it against Jan? One of them. He just kept the wrist and turtled out, basically. Put the guy on his back, but kept the hand on the floor, far away from him, which can make some interesting scrambles. And then he wrestled up from half guard. But it didn't seem like a Gregory Rodrigues priority to keep Hernandez on the bottom. He wasn't fighting for his life to do it. He was just landing some good ground and pound, and then Hernandez worked his way up pretty quickly. Oh, it was round 2 he got dropped with a load of calf kicks, and then he started swinging towards the end of round 2, had a little bit of success, and finally achieved a takedown in the last seconds. But, how hard is Gregory Rodrigues going to work to stop that in the last seconds of the round where he's, I want to say dropped, quote unquote, 4 times. Next round, 3rd round, Fluffy comes out southpaw, immediately hits a shot and gets the takedown. Being forced to switch to southpaw seemed to help him a lot, actually. And then he hit a wall again, and there was a lot of grabbing a single, pushing to the fence, and Gregory Rodrigues getting the overhook and switching his legs so that he was like the wrong way around on the fence to break Hernandez's grip, and then coming back to face him. Lots of hitting the body some more, and it sort of petered out towards the end. It was all right. It got fight of the night, but it was a really good showing by Gregory Rodrigues. And totally not what he normally does. Absolutely zero forward pressure. Oh, when I was talking about earlier, I meant to say, brilliant at loads of things that I really like. Very bad defensively while he's moving forwards, which is that's going to hamper you a lot. Because if you think of Bruno Ferreira, Jared Cannonier, they both hurt him. Cannonier several times hurt him walking forwards. just by walking him onto things. And it's like, you can bully people, you can force them around, but you are walking into the fire. They are, especially in MMA, people just grit their teeth and throw. Jamal Emmers knocked out Larian Douglas on this card by having his back to the fence and going, fuck it, better throw. And he knocked him out. You've got to have the proactive defense to be able to make the most of those situations and not just stand there and get lamped, which sometimes Robocop does. But returning to our new / incredibly old format of what could losing fighter have done better, I think before I even saw him getting calf kicked a lot, I was thinking I would like to see Anthony Hernandez throw some fucking kicks, particularly calf kicks, particularly oblique kicks, because you've got Gregory Rodrigues standing in a nice long stance. He's pumping body jabs in because that also lowers his level so he can meet you if you duck in and try and shoot on him. And he's hitting you in the body too. The reason he's able to do that is because his legs are really spread. He's low. He's prepared to meet you shoulder to shoulder on the shot. If you start hacking away below the knee, where he can't pick it up easily, you can make him shorten that stance up or just get hacked apart by low kicks or calf kicks particularly. Oblique kicks, certainly a strong one. Obviously, Ian Gary just battered Islam Makhachev with the oblique kick, ended Shavkat Rakhmanov's career with that oblique kick. No, seriously, the oblique kick is a strong technique and he's got one of the best in the world. It's especially strong against people who are either walking towards you or have a very stiff, solid, feet spread stance, because the defense is to not have all your weight on your leg and just get hammered over and over. The defense is to pick your leg up, take your leg away. So it makes the guy stand up a bit, and then you can start attacking him and level changing and stuff. I would have liked to see Fluffy. Well, one of the things that really sucked about this fight was that Fluffy Hernandez was getting clinched along the fence and he was going full Roman Dolidze mode. It's a mode you see a lot. I've got my clinch on the fence. My takedowns aren't cutting it and I'm getting beaten up in the open. So I'm going to keep this clinch, but I'm not going to strike from it. If you are the guy pursuing takedowns, you need to be able to get those entries reliably, because some guys are going to be able to use the wall to prop themselves up. That's just a fact. This is the matchup in modern MMA. Wall wrestling is everything. But if you can make the entries happen over and over again, you can then go, this isn't working, break free, punch body, head, break with an elbow, land a few knees, whatever. Get some effective offense off against a guy who can't move out of the way. Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor is such a perfect example, but John Jones, Glover Teixeira, John Jones, Daniel Cormier had too. Free your hands and hit the body or elbow the head, because the guy can't get away. He can cover up, but that's always going to be a low percentage defense if you're throwing in combination. Fluffy threw the odd elbow on the break here, but really you've got to be grinding your head into the guy. You can't get the single, so you're pulling your arms in, you're shortening your arms, you're keeping your elbows tight, and then you're wailing on his body and head with combinations. And then you level change when he throws back, and you've got a better shot of getting him off his feet because he's not there, solidly in position, going, right, I'm ready, let's wrestle. It's kind of like getting the back. I think Josh Barnett said this, but if you get the back and you don't get the choke in the first 5 seconds, you're probably not getting it. So change the position, then reset and go back to the back, and then you might get the choke, but you're not going to get it if you just sit there going, I'm probably going to get the choke sometime. You'll win points in MMA, but there's a good chance the guy turns back into you. Speaking of which, Gregory Rodrigues got the back in the last seconds of this fight, got the inside body triangle, so slightly off to the side with the leg that's going over the other leg inside Hernandez's crotch, and encouraged Hernandez to turn into him, and then tried to give him the Scottish Twister. That move, which is called the Scottish Twister, I did a big video about it, but I did a film study about it on the YouTube channel, but it's called the Scottish Twister. It should be called the Japanese Twister because it's happening in Japanese MMA all the time. But Charles Johnson hit one last week. It is such a fantastic move for MMA because the go-to in MMA is if someone's on your back, you turn into them and get on top. In jiu-jitsu, it's much more, I'm going to get my knees back between me and him. We're going to put him back into guard and we'll start over. But anyway, if Hernandez wanted to get into this, low kicks from early, particularly low below the knee, oblique kick to the front of the knee, calf kick below the knee, and punching out of clinches along the fence because he was manufacturing the clinches or Rodrigues was letting him. Either way, it was happening easily. So break free, take some fucking risks. It's not even that much of a risk because you've got the guy's back to the fence and his feet underneath him. You get the chance to hit him. And then if he throws back, which he will, you get a better entry on your second entry. And then he was the stuff he was struggling with. So the low kicks would work to take away the body jab, but the front kick was really bothering him. And I would have liked to see him just pick his leg up and cross check. It's a really over the top defense to the front kick to the body, but he was also dealing with low kicks constantly, so it was a belt and braces sort of thing that would have dealt with both. And you can always get in with punches afterwards, like semi-shield. Phenomenal front kick to the body with his lead leg, was stopping everyone with it for a while. Fights Bada Harry the first time. Bada comes out and he just cross-checks everything, takes a big step in as his leg comes down and throws the right hand over and over again. Destroys him in that fight and then loses the rematch. But definitely worth watching that fight to see how that's done. But what's next for both? Rodrigues was at number 10 and Hernandez was up at 7. I'm surprised Hernandez was so low, actually, with only the loss to Strickland before that. Next fight for Rodrigues, you could try and put him in with Adesanya, who's at 9, but obviously I think he's probably going to jump over Adesanya after these rankings are updated. Or am I on media rankings or meta rankings? I suppose I better be on the meta rankings. In which case, Rodrigues is at 11 and Adesanya is at 8, so it may well be worth doing the fight the oldest man in the division route. Always look for the oldest man in the top 10 because that's just your best chance at climbing ranks and getting a finish over a high-level opponent or a known name. Who could I see him? I could see him giving trouble to Brendan Allen because he's strong and powerful, and Brendan Allen is kind of good at everything, but serviceable at everything. And Rodrigues' thing is being serviceable at everything, but also really, really powerful. Baralio's sort of missing in action. I can't remember if he's booked or not, but Baralio's game, certainly more recently, has been more jab-led, but it has been very floaty on the outside. But he was very low output before he learned to jab. Whereas Rodrigues makes stuff happen. So that's, and Baralio shoots like one takedown a round and spends all his energy on that. He's a guy who likes to be left alone for the most part. So Rodrigues in his face would be interesting. Then you're getting up into like Imavov, Duplessis, Chimaev, and then Strickland. I've seen people calling for the Duplessis fight. I think that would be a lot of fun. This wasn't a huge step forward for him because he was fighting sort of a different style, but I would like to see him try and adopt either a bit of a tighter guard and some head movement, or hands forward towards the opponent, checking their hands so they can't throw back, because he does get hurt going forwards a good amount. Too much for a guy who's so aggressive. Next for Hernandez, Reinier Derrida just won, and his issues have been in the wrestling. Whether it's because he can't get the opponent down, or mainly when they just control whether he has to stand or can get his takedowns. God, we'll get into that in a minute, but I think that's a good fight for Hernandez. Or Baralio, again, another sort of like boxer grappler. I would expect Hernandez to have trouble on the feet. His striking looked good briefly a few fights ago, but he seems to have like lost confidence in it. And the fact that he reacts so badly to getting hit in the body, he needs to just do the Manny Pacquiao thing. Manny Pacquiao had trouble taking body shots, and they hooked him up with a new conditioning guy. And if you go watch Manny Pacquiao's ab routine now, he's worked himself up to like 1,500 reps of various weird sit-ups. And I think he does it twice a day, but it was never a problem after that. Like he just doesn't get hurt by body shots anymore. Granted, if you stand there long enough or get caught at the wrong time, you will get hurt by a body shot, but you shouldn't be getting hurt like by static knees to the body with the guy's back to the fence sort of body shots. And Hernandez was squirming when those were landing. But, fighters have been great with terrible body shot reactions, like Daniel Cormier famously. BJ Penn hated getting hit in the body. Even the Diaz brothers hated getting hit in the body. They were really good body hitters, but they hated it when he brought it back to them. So what else we got? The co-main was Vitor Petrino versus Sergey Spivak. Vitor Petrino is now like number 6 ranked. Fuck this division so much. It's fucking terrible. Speaking of terrible, next fight down was Reinier Derrida versus Roman Dolidze. I promise there were good fights on this, but this was crazy. Roman Dolidze always has a horrible game plan, but he came out, threw a body shot. I think he ducked a jab and threw a body shot, or he ducked a left straight and threw a body shot on the open side against the southpaw Reinier Derrida. Gets a beautiful underhook. Could have started wrestling. Pulls himself in underneath Derrida and starts trying to elevate him for leg locks. And at no point tries to wrestle up. He's just looking for leg locks. And Reinier Derrida is just floating over him, keeping his heels to his butt whenever he has to, slipping his knee free whenever he needs to, and punching in between. And eventually he gets the mount, and just then Dolidze turns belly down and gets pounded out from the back with not particularly hard-looking punches, but the ref was just like, yeah, this is awful. We're stopping this. Dolidze, I used to joke that like he had a good fight against Phil Hawes while Paul Craig was in the middle of his like big downfall. And Paul Craig was already getting chinned every other fight, but I remember saying like, oh, this guy looks like Paul Craig, but he's actually dangerous. He's actually less dangerous than Paul Craig. He doesn't have any striking. He doesn't have any wrestling. He's not even attempting wrestling. When he ran up against Imavov, he just tried to hold him against the fence. He had no plan. And now he's fucking pulling guard on a guy whose issue is that he can't get people down and his striking's not particularly great. I will say Derrida looked a little bit faster and snappier on the feet. Obviously he was against Roman Dolidze, whose boxing's horrible, but I just thought he looked a little bit faster than I've seen him, and maybe that weight cut was draining him a bit. Like, you can't fault Reinier Derrida in this one, but you can't really say you saw that much because his opponent just gave him a freebie. Here, mate, have your best fight. I won't make you work for it. We always have this conversation about leg locks and whether they work in MMA and stuff, and I can point to people who have used them very effectively but not got submissions with them. So Charles Oliveira and Pantoja used them constantly to get the guy turning away from them and then scramble up or even get on top. Raoni Barcelos in his last one, was it Montel Jackson, his last one? He used it very effectively to go between attacking the leg from half guard and then wrestling up on the underhook on the other side from half guard, because if you go back and forth, it works really well. If you are just focused on the leg, all you're going to get is the guy sprawling on you, punching you, getting free, and then coming back in and punching you some more, which is exactly what happened. It was so obvious what he wanted to go for, and there was no threat of him wrestling his way up. It's a trinity. Sweep, stand-up, submission. And if you're just looking for a leg, you're just looking for submissions, the guy will beat you into a pulp, probably. Particularly if they're not threatening. If you're not off-balance the guy first, you're not going to get a good entry. And Dolidze a decent grappler in just straight no-gi grappling. It's just, this was like really dumb. Go and watch Raoni Barcelos' half guard from his last fight. Well, I think he got hurt and he played a load of half guard and did brilliantly from there, going between leg locks and wrestle up attempts. It's even more maddening because he had an underhook and then he sat into guard and gave up the underhook. Like Damian Maia would get an underhook on the feet, pull himself into a half guard, keep the underhook and start wrestling up. Rafael Lovato did it to regional great Gegard Mousasi. Anyway, you don't need to know what's next for either of those guys. Who gives a shit after a fight like that? Though I do love Reinier Derrida, so, respect to him. Markel Mederos versus Mason Jones. Mason Jones was the favourite here, and Mederos shocked him. Saw some people being like, Mason Jones, terrible fight IQ or whatever. Mason Jones has really improved recently. I did an article on it after his last one. He had 3 really good fights in the UFC, or 2. And 3, and before that he had a good sort of rebuilding of himself in Cage Warriors by sort of discovering the jab and dip and the jab and pull, and also the jab into the collar tie. And he's been doing wonderful work with them. What Mederos did immediately was, as soon as Mason Jones pumped that jab out, because he's just flicking it out, he's not trying to go through the guy's head, he's just throwing it to make stuff happen. As soon as it comes out, it's the low kick. Mederos starts calf kicking immediately. Because to jab effectively, you got to spread your feet. So lots of nice kicking from Mederos in this one. Some decent countering. He was moving around the ring. He was switching stances. He was doing he's orthodox. He was retreating back to his left and switching into southpaw, which is a really cool way to set up counters. We'll talk about that more with Padilla later, who I was going to write an article about this week or last week before I went away, but I ran out of time. So I'm glad he won, because now I can write the article still. Mederos was moving a lot, dipping his head, and Jones was going jab, left knee, picking it up straight from the floor, which is such a sneaky little move, because you don't get taught to do that in it's just not good mechanics for creating power in a Muay Thai or a kickboxing class. But if you catch the guy ducking, picking your knee up from the floor like that can work really well. So Ikram Aliskerov did it against Bruno Ferreira a couple of months ago. He kept looking for it and landing it. It was really good. And he'd do a little hopping one as well. Who was that lad who fought Arman Sarukian who definitely shouldn't have? At the moment, that's heaps of people, but loads of old men and influencers. But Joaquim Silva, he looks for it a lot too. Just a little step up left knee. I think he got Jesse Ronson with it. So Mason Jones was looking for that to try and punish Mederos for ducking his head. He was going to the jab to the collar tie. One thing that happened a lot on this card was people reaching for double collar ties and getting hit over the top, it can happen. The thing that you'll see with guys who are good at the double collar tie, so Demetrius Johnson, um, Islam Makachev is fantastic with it. They reach for the double collar tie and then they pull their head in next to the guy. Sometimes they'll butt him a bit too. But if you pull your head in next to the guy, you don't get that like pulling his head down and kneeing him in the head. You're sort of like locked up against each other, but you're not going to get chinned. He can't punch hard next to his own head. And then you can get your hips back, start kneeing the body, and then you can start pulling him forward and breaking his posture. And if he does let his posture break, you can knee him in the head. But that's not the goal. And guys thinking that's the goal means that they grab collar ties miles away from themselves, and that doesn't protect you at all from the guy swinging over the top. So Jones drops him with a calf kick near the end of the first round, ends up diving over the top and on the bottom for the end of the first round, comes out for the second, and when he's going to the body with the old 2B, the right straight to the body, Mederos is looking to counter him with the elbow, which is such a good move. Because a lot of the time, when you throw straight shots to the body, a lot of the time you want the guy to punch back at your head, so that when you change it up to duck and throw an overhand or duck and come up with the left hook, they're punching down. Their hands are way away from where they should be. Their shoulders aren't up protecting them. They don't have a lot of defense. The more you get a guy to like punch in front of his own chest, the more vulnerable he is. So if you go watch Joe Frazier versus Muhammad Ali 1, he's got his head in Ali's chest and he's like, uppercut me, please. And as soon as he feels the uppercut, the left hook smashes Ali in the chin. And it was feel because Joe Frazier was basically blind. But if you counter the guy going to the body with an elbow, you raise you raise the stakes massively. Because even slipping an elbow, you've got a good chance of getting clipped and cut. And if you eat the elbow, that is a lot worse than just getting punched with nice thick gloves on. What I really liked about that counter too was that Mederos went southpaw. So Jones is hand fighting and pushing him to the fence and he's checking his lead hand. And then that's when he starts to go in for a right straight to the body. And there's a bit of a lead on it. And Mederos immediately counters with the elbow. He did it 2 more times and knocked Jones out. Brilliant fight. Brilliant showing from Mederos. I mean, I knew he was good because he was good against Padilla. And Padilla is good. But it was nice to see him win a fight with like no controversy because it was a controversial draw against Padilla and he did cheat a good amount in that fight. Completely clean here. Clean win. Very impressive. Over an extremely tough guy. I mean, he was beating the piss out of like an almost unconscious Mason Jones, and Mason Jones is still on his feet. The referee had to step in and Mason Jones's legs are still holding him up. Just crazy tough. But definitely keeping an eye on Mederos. If there is an issue, I would say the dipping low really, like Jones was trying to take advantage of it. It could become an issue for him. Certainly as fights go longer. But I'm very interested to see where it goes. I like his little stance switch back to the left. Which brings us on to Padilla, actually. A couple of things to do with that, linked with the Padilla fight. Chris Padilla, I've been writing about him because he's really interesting. He's a big watcher of film himself, and he brings good ideas into each fight that are kind of new. So in his fight with Jai Herbert, he keeps going back to the fence. He fights a lot of his fights off the fence. He keeps going back to the fence, and then he'll retreat his lead foot into southpaw. So he goes from orthodox, retreats into southpaw, and starts circling off to his left. And he was trying to like time a good left body kick or a left straight as Jai Herbert followed him, and he didn't quite get it off in that fight, but he was doing decent stuff with it here, which was interesting because when he did that switch here against the southpaw Haqparast, he put himself in a closed stance position. He was using some nice cross guard. He always has his elbows very high. It's like watching Skarbowski back in the day, the great French Nakmoy, maybe the greatest Farang, certainly one of. He used to have his elbows very high and sort of rock them up and down. And what he found was that it scared people away from throwing body kicks because they might get their shin chipped by one of his elbows. But Padilla, really high guard, and he's often like he's shading his eyes from the sun. What I love about him is that he has this he has such an obviously Muay Thai style. It's like when Khalil came out with the light lead leg, except he's for real and he's doing it in every fight. And he uses his jab really well. Like he boxes well off that base. And he uses that jab interchangeably with the long guard. So an idea that sometimes guys will call like the turtle jab. You get your right elbow really high or your forearm across your face and you hide in the crook of your elbow as you jab. And you can throw your jab to the left over their shoulder to block punches. But obviously against a southpaw, he wasn't throwing as many of those. He was throwing a lot of right straights and doubling up on it. So he'd go right straight and then step forward and poke him again with the right straight. On the subject of oblique kicks, we were talking about how, or certainly in my podcast last week, the secret emergency boycast from a Marrakesh bazaar, we were talking about how Ian Gary uses the oblique kick really well. And then he, instead of switching to the low line side kick against a southpaw fighter, which is lined up better, he just kicked across himself and made the oblique kick work. And Padilla was doing that in this fight. And what I loved about the oblique kick here, might not have been part of the plan. Well, certainly it was making Haqparast push forward. So he was trying to oblique kick him, circle off, oblique kick him, and then let him step in and meet him with the elbow. That was the plan, because he was trying that from very early on. And when he missed the elbow, like he went all the way through. It's like, whoa, fuck, I'm out of position. But that seemed to be the plan, and it was sort of coming together. But the oblique kick also exaggerated a fundamentals issue that Haqparast used to have really badly and now just shows up occasionally. He always relied on his overhand left. He's a southpaw, he throws a big overhand left. And what he'd do, like, it's like people used to describe John L. Sullivan. His lead hand would swing down to his thigh, but he'd also lean forward at the waist, which makes it very hard to step in and follow up with punches. So if the opponent moved back, he had nothing. In recent years, because they were always going on about his hand speed, but it's like it doesn't matter if the guy doesn't stand perfectly still. In recent years, he's actually managed to stay a bit more upright, and that allows him to take his feet with him as he punches, so he can throw the overhead and then throw 1-2 after it. But when you start oblique kicking people, when the oblique kick hits, it straightens their leg and pushes their hips back and puts them in that position anyway. But they also start trying to push forward and like throw punches while not putting their foot in. It creates like a bad habit in them in the moment. So it was really interesting. He was leading with his face more as a result of the oblique kicks. This was another crazy one, like the Jamal Emmers one, where the fight was shaping up interestingly. And then it was just Padilla got his back foot to the fence and he went, fuck it, threw a punch, and Haqparast was there for it and got knocked down. And then the moment Haqparast got up, Padilla's hands are on his hands. He's pursuing him. He's folding elbows. He's throwing knees. And I loved that. I thought that was fantastic. He went between the two ways to pressure someone here. He starts by pressuring with checking his hands and turning over elbows, making it hard for the guy to punch back while you're walking him down and flustering him. Very physical way to fight. And then after he landed a couple of elbows and used double collar tie, he pushed away and he starts throwing some like bullshit volume, poking out jab, straight, back fist, straight. You know, the Diaz stuff where you're throwing half-hearted punches to line up good ones. And that's another great way to put people under pressure. And he ended up slipping his head under the arm and getting an arm triangle along the fence, which is, I mean, it's a very common position in proper Muay Thai to see the clinch with the arm triangle grip. But it's a really good position to land knees from. But he got it. And you're like, can he finish this? Because sometimes that comes to nothing and they all go, oh, wouldn't it be funny? But quite a few times in big fights, it has paid off. Because you can hit an Osotogari, you can throw the guy straight down into the arm triangle. I've seen guys just grab it, squeeze and fall back. Marlon Sandro finished 2 from standing. Or like got it locked up standing and then took the guy down to the ground and finished it. One guy, he tripped. The other guy, he just fell backwards. Marlon Sandro, forgotten name in MMA. He was very fun and interesting. He was Jose Aldo's teammate, like his best sparring partner in the early era of Best Aldo. The clip of Aldo's cornerman crying after the Conor McGregor knockout, that's Marlon Sandro. And he sort of dropped off the face of the earth because he really badly assaulted his girlfriend in public. And we don't talk about him anymore. But he had some fun fucking fights. Not that one, obviously. Yeah, I love Chris Padilla. I think he's sensational. I'm very interested because the thing with a high stance is always like, how are you going to wrestle, bro? And I've seen him wrestle a bit. I've seen him use his wrestling more offensively than I've seen people try and put it on him. He does a lot of like the marching stuff, like raising one knee and then kicking with the other leg, raising one knee, then the other knee, and then kicking with the first leg. And I think people worry about dropping onto that. There was a guy called Lion Takeshi who came from shoot boxing to MMA, and he scared a few guys with that. His takedown defense and his wrestling were dog shit. But by showing them the knees constantly, guys were really freaked out and scared to shoot and lose their teeth. That'll work up to a point. It's just like, I'm quite intrigued to see Chris Padilla wrestle defensively. Oh, it was wild that this happened as the bell went for the end of the fight, by the way. He got the technical submission because he stood up and it was very clear that Haqparast was unconscious. But I really like Padilla. The elbows he lands are sensational. He's kind of like Hakeem Dawodu in that he's the internet MMA analyst's darling. And there's a few cute, and there's clips of him doing cool stuff in every fight. But Dawodu was just that. There were a couple of clips of him in every fight doing something cool. Chris Padilla actually hurts people. If you watch his fight with Rongzu, who is tough as nails, he times the counter elbow and he puts it right in his eye socket. And Rongzu thinks that he's had his eye gouged because it's so painful. And that eye just swells shut immediately. But so cool. I really hope this guy catches on, because everyone is always, the casual fan is always, why no Muay Thai in MMA? Why no Thai fighters in MMA? Not knowing that the best strawweight man of all time at this point was Ram Somdet, who was a long-time Stadium Nak Muay. And he did it mainly with his weird guard, which is even weirder. As in guard on the ground. So what could Haqparast have done to get himself into it a bit better? I think throwing kicks in his own right, a few more kicks, certainly step up outside low kick would have been a good use of his energy to corral Padilla a bit better. Padilla puts himself on the fence a lot. It would have been nice to see him enter with some left straights to the body and then maybe mix those into level changes. And then you've already got that wicked overhand. So you're setting it up beautifully. You can do the old Rocky Marciano blind right, but blind left in this case. Look at his body, change levels, throw the overhand. And you've got a great chance of knocking him out. You just got to build the setup by doing real damage with the body shots and real threats with the level changes. Also, just more believable bullshit volume, because if a guy wants to time counter elbows, it's a big committed move. So Padilla only goes for it a few times around. What he really won't like is missing, or what he really doesn't like is missing. So if you show him enough feints that he throws an elbow by accident, you've got a good chance of taking that weapon away for at least a short period after that. And then you can be more aggressive. What else going on? Fucking Shamil Gaziev versus Kennedy Nzechukwu. I joked about this, but Kennedy Nzechukwu, I have seen him fight many times. And every time I'm like, hang on, is this the same guy? Because he fights differently in every fight. Even if it worked for him last time, he changed his style again. I've seen him fight with his hands on his forehead, walking the guy down. I've seen him fight entirely wrestling with his face in the guy's chest. And now I've seen him fight, like trying to float out in the open and do counterpunching. And he's there, like dancing with his hands down, slow as molasses. And Shamil Gaziev is trash. But the one thing he can do is pitch a very hard, fast cannon of a right hand in the first 2 minutes of the fight. All you have to do is get through the 2 minutes, and then he's like, before the start of rounds. Round 2, if he gets there, he's like, oh, do I have to? He's especially funny because he's like got the Dagestani beard, and people are like, oh, big Russian monster, great wrestling, blah, blah, blah. His background is like beach volleyball. He just has a great right hand. That's it. And he's just useless aside from that. But Kennedy Nzechukwu stood there being like, I'm the fastest man alive. Bonk. I don't think he even started to move before the right hand hit him. Jamal Emmers versus Larian Douglas was crazy because it was just like Emmers got cornered and went, fuck it, I'm going for it, and knocked him out. Crazy. Anthony Wint, people were sort of raving about this guy and his potential. Obviously, Terence Chapman was I saw Smoogie describe this as a classic Scott Coker heavyweight matchup. 230 jacked, talented, athletic heavyweight versus 265 not. But honestly, I was quite impressed with Chapman's first get up off the whizzer. Got taken down immediately, got up. Went and hit the single leg and round the pipe and got him down easily the second time. Chapman got this Kimura from half guard, which should never have happened. That is bad that Wint let that happen. He got the arm behind the back. That is from there, unless the guy makes a mistake. Or you're freakish strong, but you can't rely on that heavyweight when you're a small heavyweight. Anytime you're in a Kimura, particularly like if you're on top and the guy gets the arm behind your back, certainly in training, just tap, because it's not worth getting your shoulder blown out. Or elbow, it can do either. If you're in competition, just roll over the top because you don't want to get stuck there. But Wint seemed strong as hell, and he was just like, no, I'm not going. And eventually he wiggled his way free, and he got a lovely arm triangle and did a little float over the top. And I was like, okay, I can see why you're saying this guy's talented, because he does have some nice movement on top there. And obviously, like, he's a heavyweight who's not just a fat slob, which is always groundbreaking in the UFC. I was just like, wow, that was close to disaster against a guy who's not at all notable. And then Carly Judice versus Jesla Chavez. Loved this. Came out and it was just good, solid, technical, striking point scoring that knocked the person out in the course of it. Classic Ray Robinson thing. He said in his Sugar Ray Robinson, he said in his autobiography that he realized that he was having no success in one of his many comebacks. He was fighting like shit, and his wife at the time was like, "Why are you trying to knock everyone out? You used to just dance." And then he went out like to just score points and dance for the next 2 fights and knock the guys out. If you're throwing decent enough strikes and landing them, you're going to hurt someone if you keep landing them. So it was the front kick. It was a southpaw Giudice. She was hand fighting, throwing the front kick to the body and the old 2B, the left straight to the body. And it was that until TKO. Because that's the thing about good long pokes to the body. The guy either respects them and makes an opening for you somewhere else, or takes them until they're one, tired, or just fall over. Like it. Can't wait to see more of this, lass. I got to say, like, two of the I've always joke about. I always say I'm going to write like a modern MMA must-have toolkit thing, and I always say calf kicks off both legs, because if you calf kick the guy until he changes stances, and then you can't calf kick him anymore, that's problematic. Someone like Alex Pereira is very good at calf kicking off both legs because they're completely different movements. One has a step up. But another thing that I would say everyone needs all the time, I would have said front kicks in the old days. Now I'm going to say dealing with front kicks, you need to be able to not just parry, but pick your leg up and cross check. You can block with your leg. You can parry with your knee. Really lovely one. You can use your palm inside their shin to slap it to the outside of your body and put them on your right hand. But we need to see more ways of dealing with front kicks. Guys need to be converting front kicks into their own offense, because they aren't. Drickus did a good one against Sean Strickland. Granted, it was like more of a teepee kick than a front snap kick or anything like that off the back leg. But parry it down and kick it. Works really well. In fact, Rambalek was doing it against Nabil, who's 6'5" at 145 pounds and is like the Slender Man and very, very scary. But he was doing it. And then the other sort of lady prospect on this card was Chanel Dyer. She fought Elise Reed, who is on a horrible losing streak. Well, not really. She just loses a lot. She's on a 2-fight losing streak, but she loses a lot and she gets finished a lot. But she did gamely continue when her corner begged her to please stop the fight if your fight is just getting lumped up. What I will say about Dyer, very weird sort of striking style, because she doesn't jab, she slaps. Like she threw the odd jab. I did wonder if she hurt her hand, but then she threw a couple of jabs, so I was like, maybe not. But her combinations were just left slap, right straight, or left slap, kick, or whatever. Or, she'd either slap the face or she'd go to slap the face and clear the hand. So she's always getting something. Great right straight, good low kicks. I would say her right low kick is a bit telegraphed, a bit ponderous, but Reed didn't have the tools to deal with it. I'm excited to see what she has and where she goes. And then where Schultz was basically the Fluffy Hernandez fight again. Grapplers don't like getting hit in the body. Just hated it. It was getting hit with the 2B and then ran onto a knee and almost died. It's fine. It was good. Where Schultz has been in some terrible fights, as in like he's looked terrible in some of these fights, but he also sometimes is good on the ground. So just a very flawed sort of fighter, but with a skill at least. Oh, Cody Steele was supposed to fight Gage Young. That's interesting. Anyway, it was a fine fight. It was a fine night of fights, rather. There was a PFL on, which was quite good at the same time. I haven't finished watching that, so I'll talk about that on the Boycast. There was a one event on. So it's good to be back, and I'll cover that all on the Boycast. Sign up to Patreon to get that and all my cool articles. Excited to jump back into it now that I'm refreshed and recharged and overfed. Cheers.